Göbekli Tepe hadn't been found, none of this would have happened. But it's led to a widespread interest in the whole area.
There is a massive secret buried under the sand in Turkey, and it was just fully revealed. Imagine a world 11,000 years ago where people gathered in giant stone stadiums to watch rituals we can't even imagine. This isn't science fiction. This is the reality of Karahantepe. Scientists just found 13 new artifacts that show human faces with sewn-shut mouths and giant vultures carved with perfect skill.
Everything you're seeing here was made with a flint or a stone tool, and that's it.
But the most shocking part isn't how they built it. It's the fact that they actually got worse at building over time. This key detail can shock even the smartest experts today. The underground amphitheater. Everything we thought we knew about our past is officially falling apart. Deep in the dry hills of southeastern Turkey, there is a place called Karahantepe that is shattering the timeline of human history. For a long time, experts told us that humans were just simple hunters 11,000 years ago. They said we lived in small groups and moved around constantly. But the 2025 excavation season just exposed something that makes those old stories look like fairy tales. We aren't just looking at a few old rocks here. We are looking at a massive connected network of sites that proves humans were building giant complex cities way before they ever planted a single seed of wheat. So, here is the deal with why this changes everything. The most incredible find this year was a massive circular structure that is over 56 feet wide. Archaeologists are calling it an amphitheater because it has 3 rows of stone benches built into the ground. At the center of this huge room stand 2 giant T-shaped pillars made of limestone. These pillars are heavy, weighing tons and tons, and they were carved with such skill that it looks like modern work. Around the edges, more pillars stand tall, and the walls are filled with human faces. These aren't just statues placed against the wall, they are carved directly into the rock, making it look like people are literally emerging from the stone. It is a sight that feels like it belongs in a movie, but it is very real and very old. What makes this truly WTF is that the people who built this didn't have metal tools. They didn't have wheels to move the stones, they didn't even have cows or horses to help them pull the weight. According to the old rules of history, these people should have been struggling just to find enough berries to eat. Instead, they were organizing thousands of workers to dig into solid bedrock and move 60-ton stones. This takes a level of planning and leadership that we thought didn't happen for another 6,000 years. The truth is, things get even crazier when you look at the walls. Hidden deep within these stone rooms lies a secret that defies logic. The rectangular mystery. Aside from the giant amphitheater, the latest dig revealed a second major building. This one is rectangular, about 30 feet long and 23 feet wide. The walls are still standing over 11 feet high, which is a miracle after 11,000 years. But here is the part that will blow your mind. The walls are still covered in plaster. Plaster is something that usually falls apart in a few years if it's left out in the rain. The fact that it survived for 11 millennia suggests that the people who lived here actually buried these buildings on purpose. They took the time to cover their hard work in dirt, preserving it like a time capsule for us to find today. Inside this rectangular building, researchers found a large stone bowl built right into the wall. There is even a little channel in front of it where liquids could flow. Some people have guessed that this was for ancient rituals or ceremonies that we don't fully understand. Whatever it was for, it shows that these buildings had a specific purpose. They weren't just houses, they were designed with engineering knowledge. To put a roof on a room this big, you have to understand how to balance weight so the whole thing doesn't come crashing down. These people were master builders before the first city in Mesopotamia was even a thought. Basically, we are looking at a society that knew exactly what they were doing. They moved across rooftops to get from building to building, similar to how people lived in much later cities. This means the whole town was planned out from the very start. It wasn't just a random cluster of huts, it was a dense, organized community where everyone had a role. But as we dig deeper, a very disturbing pattern is starting to show up. Wait until you hear how history seems to be moving backward. The stones tell a story of a power that began to fade away. The vanishing mastery. Usually when we look at history, things get better over time. People start with simple tools and eventually build better ones. They start with small huts and eventually build cathedrals. But at Karahantepe and the nearby sites, the opposite is happening. The oldest buildings, the ones from 11,500 years ago, are the biggest and the most beautiful. The carvings are perfect and the stones are massive. But as we look at the buildings from a few hundred years later, the quality starts to drop. The stones get smaller, the art gets simpler, the buildings aren't as impressive. This is a total nightmare for historians. It suggests that these people didn't slowly learn how to be civilized. It suggests they started out at a peak and then slowly lost their skills. It is like they inherited a bunch of knowledge they couldn't keep alive. This happens sometimes in history, but never this early. We are forced to ask where that original knowledge came from. If they didn't learn it slowly, did they bring it from somewhere else? Or was there an even older civilization that we haven't found yet? I am not going to lie, this part of the mystery is what keeps researchers up at night. The carvings found this year also show a shift in how people thought. In the beginning, everything was about wild animals like lions, snakes, and scorpions. These were carved with lifelike detail. But later on, the art shifted more toward human faces. This tells us that their culture was changing. They were moving away from the wild world and focusing more on themselves. But even as they focused more on humans, their ability to build great things was slipping away. This brings us to the strange objects they left behind. Small treasures found in the dirt might hold the biggest answers. The Bead Factory. During the 2025 archaeological season, 13 new artifacts were pulled from the ground that left the global scientific community entirely speechless. These are not just remnants of the past. They are haunting whispers from a civilization we are only beginning to understand. One of the most striking and arguably most unsettling items is a human statue recovered from the site known as Cyberg. This figure is a masterwork of ancient psychological art, depicting a person with their mouth clearly and intentionally carved as if it were sewn shut. In the context of the ancient world, this likely pointed toward a complex and perhaps terrifying burial ritual, a symbolic way to ensure the dead remain silent or to prevent the spirit from escaping into the world of the living. The eyes of the statue were crafted with deep, hollowed sockets designed to hold shiny shells, which would have caught the flickering light of a fire to create an incredibly realistic, piercing gaze. It is a piece that feels intensely personal and undeniably creepy, proving that these early people were deeply obsessed with the concepts of death, memory, and the boundary between the two. Nearby, the earth revealed a different kind of marvel, what appears to have been a massive industrial-scale factory for the production of beads. Archaeologists discovered thousands of these ornaments, each one a tiny miracle of ancient engineering. These beads are made from exceptionally hard stones, including basalt and limestone, and they feature perfectly centered holes drilled through their cores. This discovery is a total game changer because, quite frankly, this level of precision shouldn't have been possible with the tools we assume they had. To drill through basalt requires immense pressure and hardness. The sheer volume of production suggests that these people were making jewelry by the thousands, not merely for personal use, but for a wider market. This is a clear example of economic specialization, a concept we usually associate with much later civilizations. It reveals a social structure where some individuals didn't spend their days hunting or gathering. Instead, they were professional artisans supported by others who provided their food. This level of organized trade and labor proves that there was a massive, sophisticated network of people living throughout these stone hills. They were not isolated tribes struggling for survival in the wilderness. Instead, they were part of a vibrant web of communication, trading high-end goods and sharing specific artistic styles across vast distances. They had established a functioning economy thousands of years before the first coin was ever minted. The variety of the finds is staggering, from amulets shaped like frogs to beads depicting two distinct faces and stones carved with the winding forms of snakes. Each piece serves as a chapter in a larger story, showing us a world that was incredibly rich with mythology and symbolic meaning. However, despite these breathtaking revelations, one massive question remains that no researcher can yet answer. Why did this flourishing, interconnected culture eventually bury their great works and disappear into the shadows of history? How did a group of hunters manage to act like a modern nation? The truth of the stone hills. So here is the big takeaway from the 2025 discoveries. For 100 years, we have been told that farming created civilization. The story goes, humans learned to grow wheat, then they stayed in one place, then they had extra food, and then they built cities. We were taught that this was a slow, logical climb, a ladder where one rung led naturally to the next. But the stone hills prove that this story is wrong. These people built their cities and temples first. They were already civilized long before they ever became farmers. It turns out that it wasn't a full stomach that made us build monuments. It was something else. Maybe religion, maybe the need to gather, or maybe a secret we haven't figured out yet. It challenges the very foundation of how we view our ancestors and ultimately how we view ourselves. The Stone Hills Network covers hundreds of square miles of rugged, dusty landscape. While Göbekli Tepe is the most famous part, the discovery of Karahantepe and other surrounding sites is proving to be just as important. These sites are like nodes in a giant ancient internet, sharing ideas and culture across the land. The 2025 findings show that these people had a deep understanding of math, engineering, and art that we previously thought was impossible for that era. They were not primitive cavemen struggling to survive. They were us. They were people with sophisticated social structures, aesthetic sensibilities, and a collective vision. And they were doing things 11,000 years ago, moving massive limestone pillars and carving intricate three-dimensional animals that we still find difficult to explain today. When we look at the precision of the architecture, we have to admit that these weren't just random piles of rock. The newest surveys reveal that these structures were often aligned with celestial bodies or designed using geometric principles that suggest a master plan. This wasn't a trial and error process, it was a deliberate, organized effort by thousands of people working toward a common goal. They were communicating across distances, perhaps even holding great festivals or summits that brought distant groups together into a singular, cohesive culture. It was a world that was buzzing with life and intellect while the rest of the planet was still adjusting to the end of the last ice age. What most people don't realize is that we have only excavated about 5% of these sites. There is so much more buried under the hills of Turkey, still holding the breath of an era we forgot existed. Every time we dig, we find something that makes our history books look more like fiction. We are looking at a complex, interconnected world that existed when the Ice Age was barely over. It is a mystery that is only getting bigger with every passing season of excavation. The thing is, I am wondering if we are ready to accept that our ancestors were far more advanced than we ever imagined. Are we prepared to rewrite the textbooks and admit that our modern complexity might have been born much earlier and for much more mysterious reasons than we once believed? It's a humbling thought, realization that we are just rediscovering a greatness that was already there 11 millennia ago. Did we really lose a highly advanced civilization 11,000 years ago, or are we just misreading the stones? It is clear that our history is way more complex than we thought. If this society could build such wonders without farming, what else were they capable of? Make sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries that history tried to hide. What do you think was the true purpose of the amphitheater? Let us know in the comments.